So we need to simplify this algebraic expression. We have a complex fraction, so in the numerator I'll write the terms real clearly with each fraction distinct. So for example, first I'll look at this. I'll write it with a 1/2 exponent and I'll write it over 1. So x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 over 1. And now in the second expression, these are all multiplied together, so they can all be put in one fraction. We just have to figure out what goes where in the fraction. So the first x goes in the numerator over 2, because x times 1/2 is x over 2. Then as we multiply, we can put this term in the denominator with a 1/2 exponent. So we'll write x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 power. And then the 2x at the end here, that goes in the numerator. That's like a 2x over 1, so we'll say times 2x. In the denominator, the squaring and the square root, the squaring squares away the square root, so we have x squared minus 1. So let's continue. The 2's cancel, so we're just going to have a x squared in that numerator. And we'll need a common denominator. So let's take the first term and multiply it to get a common denominator. So we'll take our x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 over 1, and we'll multiply that by x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 over x squared minus 1 to the 1/2. So that will be able to be subtracted with the second term. The second term, we just have that x squared in the numerator and x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 power. And then in the denominator, there's the x squared minus 1. So let's see. We have x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 times x squared minus 1 to the 1/2, so that's x squared minus 1 to the 1 power over x squared minus 1 to the 1/2. And so we're going to subtract x squared over x squared minus 1 to the 1/2. So when we do that, we get x squared minus 1 minus x squared over x squared minus 1 to the 1/2. In the denominator, we still have this x squared minus 1, but I'm going to think of it as over 1, so I can invert and multiply. So I think we're going to have to go to the next page. So we have the x squared minus 1 minus x squared in the numerator, so that would be just a negative 1 in the numerator. And then we have the x squared minus 1 to the 1/2. And then our denominator fraction, I'll go ahead and invert and multiply now. So we have times 1 over x squared minus 1. And I'll write that to the 1 power, because then I can multiply by adding exponents. So we have negative 1 over x squared minus 1 to the 3/2 power. So we multiply the x squared minus 1 to the 1/2 times the x squared minus 1 to the 1 by adding exponents.